this is Paul Centre for RunItOnce.com, and this is the second part of my win in the 1R, 1A on Pokerstars. This was the final hand that I talked about in the last video, so I will move on, but I just decided to flat here rather than 3-bet just because of how short the stack was and how early position I'm in. Obviously later positions where we can have 3-bet bluffs against this stack size, I like this more, but I just don't really think that I'm going to really be looking to click it to 1500 here too often light. I don't think he's really expecting that. So, I mean, maybe this does therefore turn into a good bluff spot, but it just feels like maybe a few too many unknowns and a slightly too strong a range for this to be a kind of standard bluff spot. But definitely something to flick in every now and then, I guess. But moving on, we open the 7s under the gun and get an under the gun +1 flat, which I think is going to be a pretty strong range most of the time. I think I tend to almost flat 100% of my range here, and that I think kind of makes it harder for me to play against. If I'm flatting aces here and I'm flatting 9s, we're kind of protected and not getting kind of 3-bet and put in awkward spots pre-flop in some way. I mean, some people obviously don't care or going to make a move anyway, but I think having sort of a 0% 3-bet under the gun +1 against under the gun makes sense. So I don't really think that he's peeling worse than king queen suited here. So I feel like he could certainly have overpairs here and whatnot. So we start off by betting, and he calls. Pretty good turn. We're not losing to anything we weren't losing to before, and we're protected against some of his sort of decent draws. I mean, I don't expect anything worse than sort of... I mean, this guy was fairly active from what I remember. I'll get his stats up in I'll get them up now. 1 second. Okay, so his stats were from a very small sample, so we can't really read too much into it, and even though there's a kind of high VPIP in early seats, I mean, with 40 hands, that's pretty just irrelevant. But yeah, I got the impression, obviously, this guy wasn't here to fold, and like what I was about to say before, was that I just don't. I expect if he does have a flush draw to just have queen, king, ace combinations. So yeah, I think that here is a good spot for me to, like, being this deep, for me to just make a small check raise. I mean, he could decide to put me on a move here, or a semi-bluff or something, and shove over the top and we get him in dead. And I think that if I do check call, if I bet and check call this kind of a board, it turns my hand face up as kind of showdown value, whereas when I check raise, at least I'm polarized. I think as well, therefore he's just probably not going to give me any more chips on the river unless he gets there. So I think that making a small check raise here and potentially checking blankish rivers, potentially shoving, I mean, I think that I can go either way here. He may feel, I suppose in these seats, I think I'd probably prefer a river shove on a blank, given that there are obviously certainly those overpairs, and if he does put me on some kind of a move here, like with queen 10 of hearts or something, like he could feel that ace high is good enough showdown value and check back or something like that, and then we lose out. Not that he's going to call a shove with it anyway, but anyway, we'll get to the river anyway. So I make a small check raise here and try and, I think he's still obviously, well, I don't think he's folding any decent draw still at this stage. He does call, and river is pretty good. I think with a pot size bet, I should just be ripping, and we do, and just hope that he has ace king of spades or king jack or something along there, or even aces, but he folds to our shove, and we take it down. So there we just get a walk. Here we open the ace jack suited, and we get 3 bets from this guy with 40 big blinds effective. Given what's just happened, and I mean, pretty standard anyway. I mean, some people I would just peel this against, but anybody that I consider capable, I'm pretty fine 4-bet getting it in. especially post antes, and yeah, I think this is just a pretty standard get-in. Don't think would I get in any worse than this. I think probably somewhere around 8s, and this would be the bottom of my range, but he does rip. I think in this spot he may feel like he could 5-bet fold, or if he had a value hand he would feel like he could be bluffing. So I think that he would definitely be able to 5-bet his value hands, is what I'm trying to say. So I think that when he shoves, that just makes his range kind of, I would assume, like normally like small pairs and kind of suited aces, and definitely some broadways that we're dominating, and never kind of ace queen, ace king. I'm just trying to think if he could make this like, what's the least he could make it? He could make it 5.3 and have 10k behind. I think he could just about click this back. I mean, some people would. Some people that don't want to be clicking back bluffing here would probably just always shove or fold. But I felt in the moment that the shove is likely to be weak, especially button against small blind, or weaker than a click back would be. Not that it alters what hands I'm really going with. And he did 3-bet, 5-bet, shove the 6-9 suited. So lucky for us, we managed to dodge that one and take a pretty good pot. Here he's in the king jack off and get no action. Here decide to fold. I think that his stack is probably short enough that making a 3-bet here is a pretty good plan, because I feel like it's quite hard for him to 4-bet. Maybe making a sort of slightly larger 3-bet here to kind of really stop him from 4-betting and make him want to shove or fold is a decent way to go. If I had a kind of medium pair, I might be doing something like that. Well, when I say medium, something like 10s, jacks in this spot. But yeah, I'll just have a quick look as we have 1k hands on this guy. So raise first, not huge from early position. So pretty sort of standard stats, nothing we can really draw on. I mean, it's just kind of the number of bluffs I'm going to have in this spot compared to how many value hands I can actually be wanting to get in. 20 sort of, 25 big blinds under the gun open. Especially with this stack, I don't know how he's gonna be perceiving what if I'm trying to just destroy the table, or if I'm not really going to be wanting to get sort of a quarter of my stack in too light here. He may feel like I'm going to be flatting 10s and jacks and making his life hard post flop. So yeah, probably coming down to it, I fold here. But the reason I think I fold is because of how many value hands he thinks I'm actually going to want to get in here, and obviously his range is going to have a lot of kind of king queen suited and stuff that if he feels like I'm bluff heavy, we're just going to get shoved on a lot. So I mean, I don't expect him to be folding sort of king jack suited and pocket 7s, pocket 6s if he puts me heavily weighted to moves. So yeah, decide to fold this time, but definitely with his stack size it's worth considering a 3-bet, just because it's hard for him to be 4-bet folding. So that hand cuts him to shoving or folding pre-flop really, but maybe he just has a few too many chips to be able to do that. Shorties, I guess, don't kind of, maybe the shorties even help my 3-bet. So yeah, pretty close, but decide to fold. They would fold. Fold the ace-9 suited. Nothing really we can do against the 15x stack open here. So here, pretty great situation. Easy squeeze, get in against either of them. I mean, some people could definitely be trapping their aces and kings here, but I'm just getting this guy's stats to see what his VPIP is. I mean, sure, yeah, he's going to have those sometimes, but then there's every other time that he's flying some kind of too pretty hand to let go. But yeah, definitely, if I saw a kind of nitty reg doing this, I would be pretty concerned and maybe just flat. I mean, it's a pretty ugly spot, but I think I'd probably just squeeze, get it in anyway. And they do manage to both fold. Okay, it doesn't really matter if he's actually, I'll just get his stats just to see how nitty he was for me to make that play. Okay, so just a 23, 16, 10, which, I mean, I just wouldn't really expect there to be a hand that he doesn't want to reshove over this kind of stacks open. I mean, even if he has something like 7-8 suited or something, I think that's a pretty fine shove. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what hand he only wants to call with really. So that's kind of why I kind of don't love 3-bet getting it in here, as really aces and kings only make sense. But I don't know. Luckily for us, he didn't have those, and we just take the pot. Here we open the ace-9 off and get defended from the small blind. And we get check raise pretty big on this board. This doesn't make too much sense for me. I kind of expect this to maybe be something like ace-jack, ace-10 turned into a bluff, more than I think it's king-jack. This really only reps sort of king-queen, and I think that he would probably want to give me at least some rope to click it back bluff and make it a little smaller here. So I feel like this could be something like 7-8 suited or ace-10. I mean, I don't know how many of those kind of hands he's peeling from with only 21 big blinds behind. So I don't really believe this, but his sizing is kind of a bit annoying that it stops me from clicking it back, because we may as well shove, I suppose, if we're going to put in about 9k. But yeah, I like when we think about what he's flatting from the small blind here. I mean, he's obviously going to be 3-bet going with ace king, ace queen. I don't think, obviously, I mean, I don't think he'd do that sizing with if he tried to trap kings or queens pre-flop. I think sixes would be a pretty terrible call, and looking at his stacks earlier, I don't expect him to be doing that. I think he'd just be shoving those. So yeah, what does he check raise for value on this board? And I think it's kind of king queen and king jack, and even king jack is dubious. So, and king queen, I don't think he goes that size. So taking everything into account, maybe I should have just shoved here, because I just can't think of a hand that does this and makes sense. But we do let it go, and just good play from him, I guess. Here we defend the king-jack off, 30-something X effective, and I decide to check call. We turn a heart, which gives us a lot of equity, and hits our perceived check calling range reasonably well. And I think that it's pretty hard for us to get raised on this turn, and check calling just really leaves me in a kind of horrible situation on the river. I mean, I could check shove the turn, but I think that's probably a little bit spewy, and leading I'd prefer here. I think I'd certainly be leading my flushes, maybe even leading sets. I think I check raise them a decent amount, but had I decided to slow play, I might have led on this kind of a turn card. And yeah, I just don't want to be left by having to either check call or check raise this turn with as much equity as we have. It's just, with this kind of stack depth and his kind of wide range, I mean, what am I going to do when I either get there or miss? And in both situations, it feels probably a bit ugly to lead. I'm not sure. So yeah, I decide to lead the turn and barrel certain rivers. Certainly anything that improves me, other than probably a jack, and maybe bluff a few kind of board pairing cards also, but I'm not sure. But I think that this turn card gets a lot of fold equity, and yeah, we've obviously got a lot of equity also if we do get called. So that's good. Here we open the queens, and we get 3-bet to 5.4 with